In a quiet Texas suburb, a retired couple, Rose and Jim Wilson, were enjoying their peaceful life. But one ordinary day, their tranquil world was turned upside down by an extraordinary discovery. They noticed tiny, wobbly kittens playing on their patio furniture, tumbling over cushions and chasing each other like they owned the place. But these were no ordinary house cats. They were wild bobcats. Watching from a distance was their fiercely protective mother, whose intense stare made it clear this was her territory now. The couple got the surprise of a lifetime when they discovered that a family of wild bobcats had made their backyard home. But the appearance of the bobcat family was only the beginning. The real shock, the one that would challenge everything they knew about the line between the wild and their world, was yet to come. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The early morning sun, a buttery spread across the neatly mown lawn of Allen, Texas, as Rose Wilson shuffled to the kitchen window with her first cup of coffee. At 72, she had settled into a comfortable routine with her husband Jim, who was already outside checking on his gelato plants. Their modest ranch home had been their sanctuary for the past 15 years, ever since they'd downsized from the family home where they'd raised their 3 children. Jim! Rose's voice carried a note of urgency that made her husband look up from his gardening. Come look at this. Jim Wilson, a retired postal worker with hands permanently stained by Texas soil, made his way to the patio doors where Rose stood transfixed. There, tumbling across their outdoor furniture like tiny acrobats, were 2 spotted kittens unlike any house cats they'd ever seen. Are those... Jim's voice trailed off as he adjusted his glasses. I think they're bobcats, Rose whispered, her hand finding Jim's arm. Baby bobcats. The kittens, no bigger than their Yorkies, Penny and Duke, who were now barking frantically from inside, had tufted ears and spotted coats that gleamed in the morning sun. They rolled and wrestled on the cushions of the patio furniture, completely oblivious to their human audience. Jim reached for the door handle, but Rose stopped him. Wait, she said. Where's their mother? As if summoned by the question, a shadow moved in the corner of their yard. There, beneath the sprawling oak tree they'd planted when they first moved in, sat a full-grown bobcat. Her amber eyes fixed on the house with an intensity that made both humans step back from the glass. Good Lord, Jim breathed. She's beautiful. The mother bobcat was indeed magnificent. Her coat was a tapestry of browns and grays, marked with the distinctive spots and bars of her species. She sat perfectly still, watching her kittens play while keeping one eye on the house. Her presence radiated both grace and danger. We need to call someone, Rose said, already reaching for her phone. Animal control, maybe? But as they would soon discover, their unexpected visitors would challenge everything they thought they knew about sharing space with wildlife. The first call went to the Allen Police Department. The dispatcher, a young woman named Brenda, listened patiently as Rose explained their situation. Ma'am, I understand your concern, Brenda said. But unless the animals are showing signs of aggression or disease, we can't intervene. Bobcats are native wildlife. You might try calling Texas Parks and Wildlife. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department gave them a similar response, though the wildlife officer, Jake Morrison, provided more context. What you're experiencing is actually becoming more common, Jake explained over the phone. With all the development in North Texas, wildlife is adapting to urban environments. That mother probably found your yard during the heavy rains we had last month. She was looking for a safe, dry place to have her kittens. But we have dogs, Jim interjected, having joined Rose on speakerphone. Small dogs. I understand your concern, Mr. Wilson. Keep your dogs inside or supervised when they're out. Bobcats typically avoid confrontation with humans and pets, but a mother with kittens can be unpredictable. Over the next few days, the Wilsons settled into an uneasy coexistence with their wild tenants. They kept Penny and Duke inside, much to the dogs' displeasure, and watched the Bobcat family through their windows like it was their own private nature documentary. But then came the first shock. It was Rose who noticed it first. She was watching the kittens play when she saw movement near the garden shed. Another kitten emerged, then another and another. "Jim," she called, "we've got more." By the time Jim joined her, 5 bobcat kittens were visible in their backyard. 5 balls of spotted fur, tumbling and playing and stalking butterflies with adorable incompetence. "5, Jim said, shaking his head in disbelief. "She had 5 babies in our yard." The mother bobcat seemed to sense their amazement. She stretched languidly in her spot under the oak tree, then rose and padded closer to the house. The Wilsons held their breath as she approached, stopping just 20 feet from their patio door. She looked directly at them, her gaze steady and evaluating, before turning back to supervise her energetic brood. "I think she's showing them off," Rose whispered, a smile creeping across her face despite her concerns. As the days passed, the Wilsons found themselves adjusting their lives around the Bobcat family. Jim moved his morning gardening to the front yard. Rose set up a chair by the back window where she could watch the kittens while knitting. They started a journal, documenting the kittens' growth and antics. "The one with the extra spot on its left ear caught a grasshopper today," Rose would write. "The smallest one, we're calling her Tiny, tried to climb the bird feeder pole and slid down 3 times before giving up." But with the charm came challenges. As the kittens grew bolder and their hunting instincts developed, the backyard began to change. Small prey animals, mice, voles, even a young rabbit, began appearing on the patio, partially eaten and definitely smelly. "This is getting out of hand," Jim said one morning, holding his nose as he surveyed the latest gift left by the kittens. "We can't even use our own patio." Rose nodded, though she couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy as she watched Tiny attempting to drag a mouse almost as big as herself across the yard. "They're just learning," she said softly. "It's what their mother is teaching them." The real shock came 2 weeks after their initial discovery. Jim had ventured into the backyard for the first time in days, needing to check the water meter located near the back fence. He moved slowly, making noise to announce his presence. The mother bobcat watched from her usual spot but didn't move. Jim had just reached the meter when he heard it. A low, rumbling growl that made every hair on his arm stand up. He froze, then slowly turned his head. Less than 10 feet away, partially hidden behind the garden shed, was another adult bobcat. This one was larger, with a scarred ear and a more muscular build. "Rose," Jim called, his voice carefully controlled. "Call Jake Morrison. Now." Jim backed away slowly, maintaining eye contact with the new bobcat, who watched him with the same intense focus as the mother. By the time he reached the safety of the house, his hands were shaking. Jake Morrison arrived within an hour, equipped with binoculars and a wealth of knowledge. He surveyed the situation from the Wilsons' living room window, occasionally making notes in a small notebook. "That's likely the father," Jake explained. "Male bobcats don't typically stick around after mating, but the abundance of prey in suburban areas can change their behavior. He's probably been visiting at night, and you're just now seeing him during the day." "Is it safe?" Rose asked, clutching Jim's hand. "I mean, we're essentially trapped in our own home." Jake considered his words carefully. Bobcats are naturally shy of humans. The fact that they're comfortable enough to remain visible means they don't see you as a threat, which is actually a good thing. But I understand your concern. He went on to explain their options. Relocation was possible but risky. Bobcats are highly territorial, he said. Moving them to a new area often results in conflict with existing bobcats. Many relocated animals don't survive. The stress of capture and transport is also significant, especially for nursing mothers and young kittens. "So what do we do?" Jim asked. "Encourage them to leave on their own," Jake suggested. "Make your yard less attractive. Remove any food sources, including bird feeders that might attract prey animals. Use motion-activated lights and sprinklers. Play talk radio outside. Human voices often deter wildlife. Strong scents like ammonia or commercial predator urine around the perimeter can help too." The Wilsons exchanged glances. The thought of driving away the family they'd grown attached to was harder than they'd expected. "How long before the kittens are independent?" Rose asked. "Bobcat kittens typically stay with their mother for about 9 to 12 months, Jake replied. "But in urban settings with abundant food, they might disperse earlier, maybe 6 to 8 months. After Jake left, the Wilsons sat in their living room, watching the Bobcat family through the window. The kittens were playing a game of chase around the oak tree while their mother groomed herself in the fading sunlight. The male had disappeared again, likely returning to his nocturnal habits. 6 to 8 months, Jim repeated. That's a long time to be prisoners in our own home. Rose was quiet for a moment, then said, "Remember when the kids were young? How the house never felt quite right after they left for college?" Jim looked at his wife, understanding dawning. "You want them to stay." "I want to find a way to coexist," Rose corrected. "They chose us, Jim. Out of all the yards in Allen, Texas, that mother chose ours to raise her babies. Doesn't that mean something?" Over the next few days, the Wilsons found a middle ground. They installed motion sensor lights at the far corners of the yard, areas they rarely used anyway. They moved the bird feeders to the front yard and secured their garbage cans. But they left the core of the backyard, the area around the oak tree and garden shed, undisturbed. They also established new routines. Morning coffee was now taken by the back window, where they could watch the kittens emerge for their daily adventures. They discovered that the Bobcats were most active at dawn and dusk, allowing the Wilsons to use their patio during midday hours. Penny and Duke adapted too, learning to do their business in the side yard during supervised outings. The journal Rose had started became more detailed. She began recognizing individual kittens not just by their markings, but by their personalities. There was Bold One, always the first to investigate anything new. Climber, who seemed determined to reach the highest branches of every tree. Pouncer, whose hunting practice sessions were enthusiastic if not always successful. Watcher, who preferred observing to participating. And Tiny, the runt who made up for her size with determination. Jim, initially the more concerned of the two, found himself drawn into the documentation. He set up a trail camera near the oak tree, capturing nighttime footage of the family's activities. The videos revealed a whole world they'd been missing. The mother's hunting lessons, the father's occasional visits where he'd leave prey for the family, the kittens' midnight play sessions. "Look at this," Jim would say, showing Rose footage on his tablet. "She's teaching them to stalk. See how she demonstrates the crouch?" As spring turned to summer, the Wilsons watched the kittens transform from clumsy babies to sleek young predators. Their spots began to fade, their movements became more coordinated, and their play took on a more serious edge. The breakthrough in their relationship with the Bobcats came unexpectedly. Jim had been battling a rat problem in the garden shed for months, trying various traps and deterrents with no success. One morning, he found the shed door ajar. He must have forgotten to latch it properly. Expecting the worst, he peered inside to find the rat problem had been solved. No damage, no mess, just no more rats. "They're earning their keep," he told Rose with a chuckle. The real test came in late July. A severe thunderstorm rolled through Allen, bringing torrential rain and high winds. From their living room, the Wilsons watched as the mother bobcat herded her kittens under the garden shed, the same structure that had likely sheltered them during their first vulnerable weeks of life. But Tiny wasn't with them. Rose spotted her first. A small, drenched figure huddled against the fence, seemingly unable or unwilling to cross the flooding yard to reach the shelter. "We have to do something," Rose said, already heading for the door. "Rose, no," Jim said, catching her arm. "The mother dash." But the mother bobcat was already moving. She bounded across the flooded yard with powerful leaps, reaching Tiny in seconds. But instead of carrying the kitten back, she nudged her, encouraging her to follow. Tiny tried but stumbled, the water too deep for her smaller legs. That's when the unexpected happened. The mother looked directly at the house, at the Wilsons watching through the glass door. It was a look that transcended species, a mother's plea for help. Without thinking, Jim grabbed an umbrella and stepped outside. The rain immediately soaked him, but he moved slowly, deliberately toward the fence. The mother bobcat didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped back, allowing Jim to approach. Jim used the umbrella to create a bridge of sorts, laying it across the deepest part of the flooding. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Tiny, with her mother's encouragement, used the umbrella to cross the worst of the water. Once she was on higher ground, the mother grabbed her by the scruff and carried her to safety. Jim retreated to the house, his heart pounding. Rose wrapped him in a towel, both of them stunned by what had just occurred. "She trusted you," Rose whispered. "She actually trusted you." From that day forward, something shifted in the relationship between the Wilsons and the Bobcat family. The mother no longer retreated when they stepped outside during midday. The kittens, while maintaining their wild instincts, would sometimes play within view even when the couple sat on their patio. As summer waned, changes became apparent. The father's visits became less frequent. The kittens were hunting independently, bringing back their own prey. Bold One was the first to start exploring beyond the yard, disappearing for hours before returning. Jake Morrison stopped by in early September for a follow-up visit. He was amazed by what he saw. "This is remarkable," he said, photographing the scene of Rose knitting on the patio while two young bobcats napped under the oak tree. "You've achieved something really special here, a true coexistence." "They'll leave soon, won't they?" Rose asked, unable to hide the sadness in her voice. "Probably," Jake admitted. "But that's a good thing. You've given them a safe place to grow and learn. They're healthy, well-fed, and have good hunting skills. You should be proud." The departures began in late September. Bold One was first, simply not returning one day from an exploration. Climber followed a week later. By October, only Tiny and Watcher remained with their mother. The last morning came in early November. Rose knew something was different the moment she looked outside. The mother bobcat sat in the middle of the yard, her remaining kittens beside her. They weren't playing or hunting. They were just sitting, facing the house. "Jim?" Rose called softly. "I think they're saying goodbye." The couple stood at their glass door, watching as the Bobcat family held their positions for several long minutes. Then, as if responding to some unheard signal, they rose as one and padded toward the back fence. The mother paused at the fence line, looking back one last time. Her gaze met Rose's through the glass, holding for a heartbeat before she slipped through the fence and vanished. The yard felt empty in the days that followed. Jim dismantled the trail camera. Rose packed away the journal, now filled with 6 months of observations. Penny and Duke reclaimed the backyard, though they still approached the oak tree cautiously. 2 weeks after the Bobcats left, the Wilsons were having their morning coffee when Jim noticed something on the patio. A single gray feather, likely from a dove, had been placed carefully on the doormat. "Could be the wind," Jim said, but his voice lacked conviction. The feathers continued to appear every few days, always on the doormat, always carefully placed. Then one evening, as the couple watched the sunset from their patio, Rose grabbed Jim's arm. There, at the fence line, sat a young bobcat. The extra spot on the left ear was unmistakable. "Tiny," Rose breathed. The young bobcat sat for just a moment, allowing them to see how much she'd grown, how healthy she looked. Then she turned and melted back into the growing darkness. "She made it," Jim said, his voice thick with emotion. "Our little Tiny made it." The visits became a regular occurrence. Not just Tiny, but occasionally Watcher too. Never for long, never coming too close, but always acknowledging the couple who had shared their space during those crucial months. Jake Morrison, when told of the continuing visits, was astounded. That's not typical Bobcat behavior," he said. "What you've experienced, the trust you've built, it's extraordinary." As winter settled over Allen, Texas, the Wilsons resumed their full use of the backyard. But they left the area under the oak tree undisturbed, just in case. Sometimes in the early morning light, they'd find tracks in the dew, evidence of nighttime visits from their wild friends. "You know," Jim said one evening, as they sat on their patio with Penny and Duke at their feet, "I used to think this yard was ours, but maybe that's not how it works." Rose smiled, reaching for his hand. "Maybe we're all just sharing the same space, trying to figure out how to live together." "Even in the suburbs of Texas," Jim agreed. As if in response, a familiar silhouette appeared on the fence, just for a moment, just long enough to remind them that the wild was never as far away as people thought. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very patient, it would trust you enough to share its most precious secrets. The Wilsons had been chosen by a mother bobcat to witness one of nature's most intimate dramas. They had risen to the occasion, finding a way to share their space that honored both human needs and wild instincts. In return, they'd been given something precious, a connection to the natural world that would outlast any property lines or suburban boundaries. And in the quiet suburb of Allen, Texas, where manicured lawns met ancient instincts, that connection continued to thrive, one carefully placed feather at a time.